Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sophie Bearman. I am the host of the podcast, Life in 7 Songs, and the director of audio at the San Francisco Standard. This is a very special afternoon for us. This is our second ever live taping of the podcast. Our first went great. It was here at the Aspen Ideas Festival, so I know you guys are all an amazing audience. Speaking of which, because this is a live show, we have a mic on all of you, which means we want to hear you make noise. So we're going to practice. Put your hands together as loud as you can. Okay, that's good. Awesome. So on our show, we ask our guests one key question. If you could tell the story of your life in 7 meaningful songs, what would they be? And I'll share something personal for a second. When I hear a song that means something to me, I can close my eyes and truly be transported through space and time. I can be 13 singing into a hairbrush some love song. Really, you didn't want to see it, but it's true. I can be 33 singing a lullaby to my sweet baby in the middle of the night. And I can see, even from some of your faces right now nodding along, that you've had this experience as well of being transported by music. And that's what makes the format of this show so special. Our guest this afternoon is the extraordinary biographer, Walter Isaacson. I don't think he needs an introduction anywhere he goes at this point.
Maybe not in Pepka.
And so that's what I was going to say. Certainly not in this room or here at Aspen in general, but we'll indulge ourselves. He is the celebrated biographer of so many stories of greats and complicated thinkers, past and present. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, of course, come to mind. He has made a career out of shining a light on these visionaries. And I think he would tell us, and we can ask on stage, that he kind of likes it that way. And what I mean is not having the light on him, having the light on them. However, this afternoon we're going to turn that around a little bit and hear about Walter's life through the 7 songs that he says have shaped him. So please, join me in welcoming Walter
Sophie.
Isaacson to the stage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good to have you here.
Well, this is pretty wonderful. And we've curated it to be kind of New Orleans, which is
yes.
my life. So
yes,
I hope
exactly.
that's okay with
I
you,
think
Sophie.
six of the 7 songs are either of or from New Orleans. Which
Yeah, and they all have a bit of a connection.
It's going to be a party. Well, indulge me. I'm going to tell you a quick story. You and I went to the same college. We both went to Harvard. I think just a few years apart, even.
Yeah.
You came to speak, it must have been 2012, to talk about storytelling and writing. And I remember a piece of advice that you gave. I mean, it really stuck with me. It was, tell the story from the beginning. So.
Narrative. Let me tell you a story.
If
it's good enough for the Bible, it's good enough for us, right?
So I thought we should test it out, and then obviously if the conversation is a bust, we know who to blame. Right? So let's start at the beginning with your first song, Brother John, Iko Iko.
You know, I grew up in the heart of New Orleans, and there was a street called Valence Street, still is. And it was an interesting street because, like a lot of streets in that heart of New Orleans, it was black and white, rich and poor, the most diverse street you can imagine. And at one end, the Neville brothers were all growing up. I'm sure most of you who love music love
them.
all the Nevilles, many generations of Nevilles. And when they were very young, even before the Meters, they were in a marching group called the Wild Chapatulas. But right on that block, too, was a club called Valencia, which was for the preppiest Mardi Gras elite white kids. But they were right together. And so you spent time sort of sharing the music, sharing the common ground of Valence Street. And even with this song, you know, which is about my flag boy, your flag boy, and they meet and they march, it's about different groups meeting and how creativity comes from such diversity. And some of you may know about the Mardi Gras Indians, the marching Indians, the black masking Indians of Mardi Gras. They're blacks from different parts of the city, but each have tribes in the parts of the city. And on Mardi Gras, very early in the morning, they put on these huge regalias, and they march with a sort of beat. And we used to get up early Mardi Gras morning, very young, and take our bicycles. And what you would do is you try to hear the songs. You try to hear them in the distance. You say, look, I hear it there. And you'd hear the Mud Flag Boy, and it'd be chanting in the distance. And to me, it sort of became a metaphor for being curious, exploring, hearing mysterious things, riding your bike towards it to see what it was like. And they'd always be singing Brother John, which was one of the leaders of the Mardi Gras Indians, and Iko Iko. But there was also a group there called the Dixie Cups, also on Valance Street. And the best rendition of the song is the Dixie Cups and the Neville Brothers.
And they join up together. Let's take a listen to that. Yep. Brother John is gone. Brother John is gone.
And you could hear the 2/4 sound, which is the earliest parts of jazz, which come from these marching groups.
Tell us a little bit more about your childhood. Who raised you? What your parents were like? What it was like growing up there.
I write about really creative people. And one thing they have in common is they're all kind of misfits. They don't fit in. Leonardo growing up illegitimate and distracted and gay and left-handed in a small village of Vinci, or Einstein growing up Jewish in Germany. And that kind of drives them. I have the good fortune to be on the other side, sort of the observer, because I was raised by the two smartest, nicest people I know, my parents, in the wonderful city with wonderful friends. And so I had this magical childhood growing up, listening to the music and the street music.
Yeah, let's speak about that, because in many of your biographies, you talk about how your subjects battle demons, and those demons spur them to become what they become. Did you have any demons?
Well, I wish I could sort of summon up a demon to make myself more interesting. Maybe that's why I'm more of an observer than a man in the arena. There's one thing I learned, though, growing up. And Michael Lewis, who grew up with me, some of you may know him, Liars Poker, and all grew up in the neighborhood. Like you, he points out he's a few years younger, but we still went to school together. He said that those people who wake up every morning and realize how lucky they are and carry a little part of a badge of gratitude there are the happiest campers around. And I think that I've always tried to remember, and when Kathy and I go back to New Orleans, try to remember, okay, and look, it's true of everybody in this room, we were just fortunate. And sometimes we may say, okay, we've got demons, whatever, but just remember the gratitude part, the waking up every morning and thinking you're lucky, so that you can make sure that you can help others have some of the luckiness you happen to get.
That's great advice. Your next song, it's another New Orleans institution, Sweet Emma Barrett and her Dixieland Boys, singing When the Saints Go Marching In from 1961. So if you close your eyes, where does it take you?
Well, to Preservation Hall, of course, which is where Sweet Emma Barrett and her band and others played. Preservation Hall is right in the heart of the French Quarter, and we could go there because it didn't serve drinks. So at age 14, 15, we, Tom and Jimmy and my friends, we'd all go to Preservation Hall, sit on the front row. It only had maybe 50 seats, and Sweet Emma Barrett was a piano player. She was misnamed as her nickname because she wasn't all that sweet. She was kind of, somebody'd come up, try to talk to her, and she'd just like bark at them or whatever.
She was a little nasty.
And yeah, she was definitely nasty. But the band, it was Percy Humphrey and Willie Humphrey, two brothers on clarinet, trumpet. And one of the things most people have probably been to Preservation Hall, but even back then they had a sign right behind the band for when you wanted to make a request. And it was $1 in the hat if you wanted to request a traditional jazz song like St. James Infirmary or Basin Street Blues. And then $2 if you wanted to do something that wasn't really traditional jazz, like some song from Oklahoma, and they'd roll their eyes. But it then said, and the Saints, $5. Because they were so sick of everybody always requesting the Saints, they made it a money-making engine. So when I was thinking of what song do I want, I said, well, it's just too trite to do the one you have to pay $5 for. But the Saints, it just became the theme song of New Orleans. I mean, not only our football team, but whenever I'd hear that song, played slowly sometimes after the hurricane, you know, it just brings you back home.
Let's listen to When the Saints Go Marching.
By Sweet Emma, I hope.
Yes, okay. By Sweet Emma. There she is.
Yeah, she is.
She sounds like a woman in control.
Oh, she was definitely in control. And in a band like that, it doesn't have a bass drummer when it's at the hall. So with her left hand, she had to do the backbeat. And
wow.
So sometimes when people get off the beat, there'd be a tuba player. She'd just turn around and bark at them because she wanted to be in control of this song. But in the end, whenever you want to evoke a spirit of New Orleans, I think When the Saints is it. Obviously, Louis Armstrong does a very famous version, I think in the late 1920s. And, you know, different people have covered it. But in my mind's eye, I just remember being a 15-year-old sitting there on that on the floor, because you couldn't take up one of the bench seats, and watching Sweet Emma play the Saints.
So as a teen, you're listening to the Dixie Cups and Sweet Emma. You're also trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. And I know that one of your earliest inspirations was the novelist Walter Percy, who gave you some very good advice, sort of like you gave me.
Was the one I gave you? Yeah.
Oh, it was the one and the same?
Well, it's one and the same, which is I never knew what we used to call him Uncle Walker did. He was the one of my best friend's uncles, and we'd go to...
Can I just say, you would go over to flirt with his daughter, Anne, right?
Well, we'd go water skiing with Anne, who was interesting. She was our age, and she was deaf, but she sign language and lip read well. And so it got me thinking of the meaning of language and how you label things with words. And Walter Percy, before he was a novelist, wrote about the meaning of language. And that became something I was interested in. But I couldn't figure out what Uncle Walker did. And I finally said to Anne, what does your dad do? He's always sitting on the dock, you know, in the Bogafalaya, where they had their house, a bayou, and eating hogshead cheese and drinking bourbon. He doesn't seem to work. And people called him Dr. Percy, but he wasn't a practicing doctor. And she said, well, he's a writer. And I said, writer? You know, I knew you could be an engineer like my dad, or a fisherman, or a doctor, and so finally I read The Moviegoer, which came out right around the time we're talking about, 1961 or so. And I went, wow, I get it. You can be a writer. And I said to Walter Percy, you know, you seem to be teaching a lot of things. It's almost had religious elements in it. What are you trying to, you know, preach there? And he said, look, there are two types of people come out of Louisiana, preachers and storytellers. And he said, for heaven's sake, be a storyteller. The world's got too many preachers. And so when you're trying to convey something, it's the advice I said to you. The magic words are, let me tell you a story, and you make it chronological.
Let's go to your next song. It's Irma Thomas's It's Raining, which I believe you saw her perform live around 1970. Why does this song make your list?
Well, you know, Irma Thomas, the soul queen of New Orleans, I thought she was one of the world's great singers, like Aretha Franklin and others, but I realized she was basically a local, you know, beloved local person, played at every high school prom, every charity thing. In 1970, I think it was, you can check it, they decided to start with the Jazz Festival in New Orleans. So I think only about 400 people showed up. And I remember going to those very first jazz festivals there. For the first 2 or 3 years, it was just in this neighborhood park. And the last song, always, on Sunday afternoon, was Irma Thomas. And she always sang, it's raining, Partly because it was almost always raining, you know, in late April in New Orleans. And she did it very soulfully. And it had a deeper meaning when you're growing up in New Orleans because the rain is supposed to be, but it's no, the rain is a really good thing. And, you know, I wish the rain would hurry up. And so she'd always end it with, it's raining.
Let's listen to It's Raining by Irma Thomas.
Oh, I'm about to cry now. Holding you tight. I wish the rain. Oops, I'm sorry I missed it.
I like your singing voice. You know, in an email to me, you said this song was an ode to our resilience.
Yeah, you know, It's Raining took on other meanings too. And so you asked about demons. You asked about growing up. Yeah, I mean, everybody's got problems and challenges in life. And metaphor for that is, you know, it's raining, and I wish the rain would hurry up. And it's how you bounce back from. And I guess even the next layer is not how you bounce back from it's raining, but I know Kathy will remember. When it starts raining real hard in New Orleans, I say, let's go sit on the porch and watch it. I mean, I kind of love Marie Curie would have called it the ionization of the air that comes when the air becomes electrified because you have a thunderstorm.
I love a summer storm. That catharsis of just.
Well, it's a catharsis, and so her singing It's Raining helps you understand, you know, both the storm and the resilience.
But let's go to your next one. We move from R&B to the Rolling Stones.
By the way, we're still with R&B. That's the secret.
Okay.
I mean, that's why, you know, suddenly I go away to college, and I realize not all music is funk. You know, Iko to soul and funk, soul, jazz, that rock music has hit. And I hadn't been, you know, I loved our local music, but of course in the late 60s, early 70s, rock is hitting. When I got to college, I had all these roommates who, back then you had stereo systems, and they'd say, okay, we'll use my speakers, they're the best, your turntable, this amplifier, and I'm like, okay, I have a transistor radio, you know, from home. But the big debate was always the Beatles or the Stones. And I remember asking Steve Jobs asking this when we were talking, and he had all his songs, he played them over and over when he was dying, is if there was the songs in the vault and the building catches on fire and you can save only one set of originals, would you save the Beatles or the Stones? Or Dylan?
That's tough.
And I ended up being a Stones person, partly because, as you sort of said, I realize it's rhythm and blues. They play in a way that does homage to the blues singers that especially Mick Jagger and Ron and others in the band loved. And there was a rebellion, of course, but in the way that I felt more comfortable with, which is a good-natured, we know this world's a good place, but we're still going to push back a bit. And the obvious rhythm and blues, but also rebel song, which I think is the greatest rock song ever done, is Sympathy for the Devil. Who killed the Kennedys? After all, it was you and me.
I mean, this is a fascinating song because it's kind of from the perspective of the devil, right? Laying out all of the wrongdoings over time.
But it's not just the devil. I mean, as you've heard the line, you know, who killed the Kennedys? After all, it was you and me. And so it's understanding, you mentioned the word demons, but those demons that still may be lurking in all of us.
With your next song, we're going to move forward a lot through time and talk about Katrina. It's Bruce Springsteen's My City of Ruins. You chose a particular performance of it at the 2006 New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival.
Okay, 2006.
1 year after.
When we thought the city wasn't coming back.
Yep.
And there were a couple of things we had to make a deal with the good Lord or whatever about, which is, all right, we know the city will come back if the Saints win the Super Bowl. Now, that's a ridiculous thing to ask. Saints don't ever have a winning record, right? And I think we all said we'll never ask for anything else. But also, Jazz Fest has to come back. And Springsteen came. And at the I'm sorry, I took it up, yeah. But the very end of that set, he said, and he did City of Ruin. And everybody just waved the handkerchiefs. Play it.
Let's listen.
Now, imagine 20,000 people singing that. And know we would come back.
I can see it
Sorry
moves.
about
No,
this.
it's.
Yeah.
I understand. It was an impossible time.
Not really, because once everybody's singing "Rise Up,"
And then it wasn't.
and the Saints won. And when the Saints go marching in, yeah.
Your love for New Orleans is coming through so strongly. And in 2018, I believe you moved back.
I had been asked by the governor after Katrina to be the vice chair of the Recovery Authority. And that meant many things, especially bringing back the education system. We weren't just trying to, revive the city. We were trying to build the city we wanted to have had.
Yeah.
And so we built a new type of school system where parents had choice of any school they wanted to go to. And it was very important for us to, not just bring the city back, but have people come back. So that's when I said, okay, I'm going to put down roots and teach at Tulane, where my parents and grandparents all went. And that's what you do when you get to a certain stage. David Brooks talks about it, the next mountains of your life, is you go back to your roots if you can. I mean, not everybody has a glorious, town that was their hometown, but going back to your roots when your roots obviously mean a lot to you. And so I decided to go teach at the university that had created my parents and grandparents, and to be back in my hometown, even as we kind of wander around and go other places too.
It strikes me that a different way of thinking about that is the question of what is my legacy, in a sense.
Well, you want to pay it forward. If you've had some gratitude for the things that made you and nurtured you, and for the cradles of creativity that allowed you to be what you were, your way of paying it forward is going back. And I am trying to romanticize it, but one shouldn't romanticize it, because it's got enormous challenges and inequities of wealth and everything else. And you say, okay, so how do we not just preserve the city, but it's moving it forward, having foundations to teach kids, having to make sure that you're bringing in the Haitian music when everybody else is demonizing, Haitians living in Columbus. It's these are great for us, and the Vietnamese. And so you want to preserve, but you also want to pay it forward and see if you can have preservation and progress.
Your next song is Mick Jagger and Irma Thomas.
Right, you see, we bring them together. That's why.
Full circle.
So the Rolling Stones were supposed to play Jazz Fest often. They did it when I was very young. I remember seeing them in the 70s. But just this past year, I think it's 2024, the Stones are coming back. And to me, this is like almost everything coming together. And Mick Jagger just hit 80, I think. And he's prancing around doing Sympathy for the Devil, all these songs. It's great. And then at the very end, he said, when we were young, it was maybe 1964 or something.
Okay. We
weren't a big band then. We hadn't made any, we had never had a #1 record, but we were driving around and we heard on the radio this song. And this song was called Time Is On Your Side. On my side. Time Is On My Side. And we just loved it. And we said, okay, we're going to record that song because we had heard on the radio. And so they recorded it and it becomes, as some of you know, their first hit in America. Suddenly they're up there with the Beatles. They've got a #1 Billboard hit, Time Is On My Side. And so he tells this story, and he said, and I want to bring out the woman who sang that song in the 1960s when we first heard it. And you can guess who it was. Irma Thomas comes out. So Irma Thomas, the soul queen of New Orleans, who had done that song when they were young, he gets and he does this duet. They're two people in their 80s, but they're prancing on that stage, same stage that Springsteen had done, Rise Up, Rise Up. And they did. And there's sort of a poignancy when you get to 80s, maybe even when you get to your 70s, of hearing Time Is On My Side.
Let's listen to it. Yes, it is.
There are two of them just holding that microphone together. It was really great.
So you were there, and I think you tweeted.
Way back, and we didn't know he was going to bring Irma Thomas on.
Oh, my goodness.
It was a total surprise. Surprise to the 20,000 of us there.
And you tweeted, I went back, you did. You said, yes, it is.
Oh, yeah. Time is on
Time
my
is
side.
on our side.
Yes, it is.
What did you realize? What does it sort of mean to hear that at this point in your life?
We all go through life, and we've had this chronological journey, as I told you. Keep it chronological. Keep a story. And each phase of your life has a different meaning to it. And yet, there are things that connect you back, whether it be hearing Irma Thomas. And by the way, when you heard Irma Thomas now doing Yes It Is, Thomas, the refrain with Mick Jagger, you can hear Sweet Emma Barrett. It's the same soulful rhythm and blues, but jazzing it up a bit. And so I think as you go through life, you have to not only relish the different times and also embrace the new phase you're in so that you're not trying to do the same thing you did in your 30s. But you also have to remember the resonances, the chords that you heard. Basically the chords that you first heard in your teens should still resonate when time is on your side.
Your last song is John Batiste's Freedom. And you're a good friend of John's. John got his start in many ways. Here at Aspen, at least early on.
Well, we can tell that story.
You should.
John Batiste was a backup player in a trio for Wynton Marsalis up at Juilliard. And Wynton is sort of the grumpy old uncle. And John Batiste is this fresh-faced kid playing this sort of mouth organ, this harmonica. He's 16 or 17, and I run into him and get to talking to him. And of course, you have the name Batiste. There's certain names in New Orleans: the Nevilles, the Batistes, the Baquets, the Creole of color, who were great in the jazz era. And so I'm saying, okay, it was Uncle Earl Batiste, that was your uncle, so he's from this great tradition. And so at some point, I said, why don't you come out to Aspen? We've started this thing called Ideas Fest. And Wynton is coming out and doing it. And so John came out, and he did something in the tent, in the Greenwald tent, with just him and Wynton, about jazz, and we just did it impromptu. We didn't prepare. It was 4th of July, so Batiste starts with the national anthem. Then I said, okay, let's start with the beginning of jazz. Let's start with the 2/4 time of the marching bands. Let's then go and we went to the Plantation Blues. I said, okay, play St. James Infirmary. Show me. And they did it all the way through till you got through to the modern era of jazz. And they're having a great time. And it so happened that the producer for the Colbert Report saw it and said, will you come on this show called the Colbert? I don't know if it was Colbert Report or the Colbert Show. It was, early on. And so he came and he performed on Colbert, after which Colbert said, would you consider being the band on the new show that he was starting? So I've always felt, a glow whenever I see a smile, and his smile, of course, can light up a room.
It's infectious.
And if I look now, and I've watched all the things, he and Wynton Marsalis both have a ability to combine a whole lot of genres, which is what jazz is about, but what it's bringing jazz forward is all about. And so I always liked that John Batiste, very classically trained, both as a pianist, singer, and everything else, could do what happened more than a century ago, which is bringing genres and people and diversity together to create a new type of music, in that case, jazz. And in these very troubled times, when there's such a feel of authoritarianism in the air, the key word you want, as we're about to enter the 250th birthday of our country, the key word you want is freedom, and the sense of freedom is something in common for all the diverse types of people. Could be up on Valence Street, from the Preppies to the Neville Brothers, and that celebration. So not only is the song great, but the video he does of the song, of each of all those marching Mardi Gras Indians, all these marching people. He does it in Treme, which is not quite where Valence Street is, but of him doing that brings back memories of my childhood watching the different types of music on Valence Street, and it's called Freedom.
Let's listen to Freedom.
You hear the Congo Square drummers.
Yeah. Freedom. Free. It's such a celebration, this song.
Yeah, and that's what it should be. I mean, music is supposed to challenge us, make us understand sympathy for the devil, make us understand it's raining, but it's also supposed to be, in the end, the exuberance of it all. And if you want to know why it begins jazz with the spirituals of the plantation and I'll Fly Away and all those songs, is because even in the hardest of times, it's that sense of, okay, we can have a sense of freedom, a sense of exuberation, and try to capture the joy even through the troubles. And so the spirituals do that. Rhythm and blues does that. Jazz does that. Even rock does it. And then when John Batiste brings it all together in something like Freedom, if you say, he wins Emmys in every genre, but, if you say, okay, what genre should Freedom be in, it doesn't quite fit. It's not rock, it's not jazz necessarily, but it is who we are as a nation, which is different people have come together. And when we're at our best, we're celebrating and having the exhilaration that comes even from the frictions that the diversity brings.
I'm really serious when I ask this. Have you considered writing a book about New Orleans?
Well,
because it's a character, right?
Yeah, it is a character. It's interesting. Well, first of all, every book I've done about geniuses, part of it is the cradle of creativity that allows that genius. The greatest of all being Florence in around 1500. But what happens in Florence? Well, people are coming in from the Ottoman Empire because the fall of the war, the Silk Road is going there. They have the stable currency. Gutenberg's printing press is actually being used there first. And so you have a diverse group of people coming in, and it's a cradle of creativity. Same with Philadelphia when Ben Franklin arrives from a very more rigid city of Boston. He runs away to go to Philadelphia with its diversity. So there are places like that that become cradles of creativity. That's what'll bring America out of its current crisis, is all these wonderful localities, whether it's Austin or New Orleans or places that do that. Denver now doing it. But so yes, whenever you write about creative people, one of the best supporting characters in it is the venue, and that's in some cases New Orleans. I'm thinking of doing something with Terence Blanchard, who's also part of that tradition of New Orleans, a great trumpeter, who also has written 2 operas for the Metropolitan Opera, but plays jazz, written Spike Lee's scores, grew up in the same neighborhood in New Orleans. Doing something about Storyville and Lulu White and Mahogany Hall. So I'd like to do one more thing about the city, although that's a little bit more of a complicated project if we get that one underway.
Well, Walter, all I can say is we are so lucky for your curiosity, truly. And I suppose we're all lucky for New Orleans then, because it taught you that. So thank you so much for sharing your 7 songs.
Well, thank you, Sophie. I appreciate it.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.